Okay, so for the ones who had joined just now and who had missed the introduction, I would like to repeat what I have been telling you all, and I would like the others to bear with me because it's going to be a repetition for you, I know, but let me be very short for the ones who have just joined. Okay, so I am Dr. Suganti Rao from BA English. Okay, and I am your communication teacher. I am the communication teacher for you all. For this course, this 6 days course, basic communication, basic English communications. Okay, so as a basic English communication tutor, okay, or else a faculty, whatever you would wish to call me, as a resource person, I would like to tell about the basics and the purpose of this course. This course is fundamentally, is chiefly for you all to overcome your fear to speak. Usually, you have developed a fear to speak because you are not fluent in spoken language. We feel that we are not fluent in the spoken English language. Okay, and this course helps you all to overcome that fear, confront that fear, open up, and then speak. And how does it help you all to overcome the fear of speaking in English? Is that by the first step is by rectifying your small mistakes which you make while you speak in English. Okay, and to learn what type of sentence structures to be used at a particular situation while speaking in English. Okay, so English being a global communication language, okay, and it is not a very it's not a very foreign language to us all because we've been under the imperialistic rule. And one fortunate thing uh, which we have acquired during the British rule is this global language. We cannot say that it is a global language, that this is a foreign language to us, because throughout in our conversation, though we use our vernacular, நம்ம மதர் டங் யூஸ் பண்ணாலும் அதுல நிறைய நம்ம இங்கிலீஷ் வேர்ட்ஸ் யூஸ் பண்றோம். We've been using a lot of English words, so this is not a foreign language to us at all. Okay, so keeping that in mind, we should always keep that in mind while we learn English. We should know that we already know a lot of English words, so we are going to make use of these words in our conversation, that's all. And we are also going to learn how to converse in the right way. Okay, so there is no need for us to have any fear of speaking in English. But one thing, an effort from your side which I would like to insist is that you have to be quite regular to you have to be a little, not little, very much regular to this class, so that you reap the benefit of this class entirely. Okay, and this will strengthen your basic English communication skills. Now, what do we actually mean by communication? We communicate in different ways. Okay, we can communicate by showing a picture, we can communicate by showing a gesture, by an action, by a more body language. We can communicate with our eyes, we can communicate with a language. Okay, and it is very easy for us. When we start communicating, we start by listening to the right language spoken, and that is how we start communicating in our mother tongue as well. Okay, so when we start communicating, we listen to who and all speaks around us, and then we try to imitate the same. Okay, we try to imitate the same, and after that we get ourselves admitted in a school where we are taught letters, where we are taught to join the letters, combine the letters, and we are taught to pronounce words, to utter words. Then from words we speak sentences, then from sentences we develop conversation, we develop a lengthy speech, spoken language. So this is how language learning happens. Okay, and it is very easy when it is going to be the mother tongue. Mother tongue la பேசும்போது இந்த process is very easy. The process கொஞ்சம் ஈஸியா இருக்கும். ஆனா when we learn a foreign language, okay, when we are subjected to learn a different language, then the process seems a little tough for us, okay, a little difficult for us, because most of the time when a language is taught, it is taught with the grammatical rules. We are taught a lot of grammatical rules, and with the grammatical rules we are made to learn the language, so that becomes a difficulty for us. So than speaking the language, we tend to remember only the grammatical rules, and in an exam point of view we remember the grammatical rules and we apply the grammatical rules to answer the questions alone and to get marks. We our aim is only to get marks. But there is a rare thought amongst us that we have to learn a language for communication. Okay, we never learn a language for communication. If we were serious about it, we would have become a fluent speaker of English language. Okay, or else I wouldn't say that the fault lies only in the learner's side. It is also there in the teacher's side. Okay, because most of the language teachers, they fail in in um, being giving more importance to completion of syllabus and giving more importance to teach students in an exam point of view and scoring marks. They, the language teachers especially, they tend to fail in teaching the language in a functional form. They tend to fail to teach language to use it for communication. So when this happens, there is a lot of difficulty amongst the language learners to use that in the spoken or the written form. Okay, so we all have a difficulty when we have to write in English, when we have to speak in English for quite some time. Okay, so this, to overcome all these difficulties, to overcome all these fears, to confront all these fears, we have started with this basic communication class. Okay, so the basic why have we named this class as a basic communication class is because you will learn all the basic things needed for a good user of the language, good user of English language. Okay, or if you have to speak to someone else without any mistakes, you will learn through this course. Okay, so I would like you all to be attentive for this class. Remember what and all has been taught to you. Remember the video links which has been shared with you. Okay, and you will be able to thoroughly learn the language, and whenever whenever you are able to try to use the language as as which has been taught to you, as it has been taught to you. Okay, so try to use, converse among your friends, converse with your professors in the language which is taught to you. Don't feel shy, or don't feel that others will make fun of you. Okay, even if someone makes fun of you or if you feel shy, it is your effort where you have to overcome this attitude. Okay, so when we start to speak in a language, when we go to a place, and when we have to speak with people, not using our mother tongue, a common, when we have to speak in a common language, then what happens is we speak in a language that is understood by everyone. Okay, and in a work scenario, as you all are graduate, as you all are students graduating, okay, in certain period of time you will be graduating, and most of you all will be going, you will be going for higher studies, or else you will be working, or else you will be an entrepreneur. Okay, so in all these walks of life, you will understand that you need to communicate in a language which everyone would understand. So when you think of all these things, okay, now as teachers, we are placed, we have got a job in Tamil Nadu, and it is not necessary that we only know Tamil as a spoken language. We can, it is not that we can only manage with Tamil as a spoken language. Now, then if we think like that way, we will be limiting our area within Tamil Nadu. But if we want to reach out globally, okay, if we want to know what is happening beyond the classrooms of Tamil Nadu, then we have to know a language in common, which is commonly used by people all around the world, that is English. Okay, so while we do so, when we have to do that, okay, so we have to master the language. We have to master the language in communications. And to master in communications, we have to acquire all the four skills. All the four skills should be learned hand in hand. Okay, the four skills to be learned for a language is listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. So LSRW, you call it the LSRW skills. Okay, so first comes the listening. You listen to a language, you imitate what you listen to. Okay, then speak it. Then that's how you speak it. You listen. That's how you learned your mother tongue as well. You listen to someone speak, then you imitated it by speaking. Then you were sent to school for reading. Okay, in school you acquired the reading skill, okay, where you were taught the alphabet, where you were taught the letters of the alphabet, where you had taught to join the letters and the different sounds produced by the letter to create a word. Then you use those words in sentences and phrases. Okay, so this is how you started learning a language, and these sentences were further lengthened by making it a conversation, 3 or 4 line conversation. So this is how you started learning the language, using the language. Okay, the same way, the English also has to be done. Now we all have a question that we've been learning English from a very long time. Some would have learned it from their primary class. Some would have started learning English from third standard or fourth standard. Okay, so whatever it has been a very early age where we have started learning a language, and throughout 12 long years, or else some 7 long years, we have been exposed to this language. We have been exposed to English language, but we find it very difficult when it comes to speak, when we have to speak in the language, when we have to write in the language, when we have to read and understand the language. Okay, so this is a problem. It is a bone, it is a thorn in our flesh. Okay, it's a thorn in our flesh, and it's a difficulty which we all face. Now, how to overcome this difficulty? Now, whenever we learn to communicate in a language, we have to master all the four, as we all are adult learners. You, myself, everyone else who is learning English at an adult stage after crossing our teenage. Okay, when then we are called as adult learners. When we all are adult learners, okay, then we should remember, as teenagers, at the end of being a teenager and entering into adulthood, we should understand that we have to learn the language by mastering all the four skills hand in hand. It has to go hand in hand. It is not just listening to the language, it is not just speaking the language, it is not just reading in language, it is not just writing in language. All the four skills should go hand in hand. Only then we will be able to call ourselves as good users of the language. We will have the potential to use the language correctly. So that's how we master the language. Okay, so in order to master the language, in order to use the language correctly, we have to exercise. Now see, when we do when we are doing when we want to do something, we want to make something a habit. We want to make a we want to acquire something in our daily routine. We make it a habit. We exercise on it. Let's say to reduce our body, we have to we want to shed out our flag. Okay, we want to shed our excess weight. What do? We follow a diet plan, and that diet plan is not followed for a day or two. It is followed regularly for a course. We exercise for a period of time. Okay, the same way, if we have to become fluent in English, we need to exercise for a period of time by listening, speaking, reading, and writing in English. If all these four skills are practiced hand in hand, then we will be able to become good speakers of the language. Okay, so whenever we are in a job scenario or somewhere, when we are a stranger or when we meet a stranger, it is very important that we introduce ourselves with one another. Okay, how do we greet one another? First thing when we meet a person as such, the first thing in communication is that when we meet someone, or when we get ourselves introduced to someone, what happens is we actually uh, we actually you have to speak a few words in order to break the ice between us. So the first lesson which we are going to learn is about greetings and introduction. How do we greet people? How do we introduce ourselves to people? Okay, that's going to be our first lesson for the day. Okay, so when we have to greet people, there are two ways of greeting people. Okay, and we do it in our day-to-day life. Now, one thing what we do is we greet one another in a formal or an informal way. Okay, the informal greeting is hi, hello. Okay, all these things. uh, okay, when you just waving your hands. Okay, uh, just raising your thumb. Okay, and all these things. How do you do? When do you do? It is when you meet your friends or your relatives, someone of your age. Okay, this is an informal way of greeting one another. Hi, hello. Okay, but when you have to formally greet one another, say that you are walking in the roads, in the thoroughfare of your college. Okay, on the roads of your college, and all of a sudden you meet the principal or your senior professor. Okay, who is there walking in front of you, or else who is just walking opposite to you. That time, what you need to do, you have to greet them. So when you greet them, you greet them by by saying good morning or good afternoon or good evening. That's how you greet the person. Okay, so when you greet the person, it always depends upon the time of the day that you greet the person. Now, many think that since you have not met the person in the morning, it is okay to greet the person good morning in an afternoon. No. ஆஃப்டர்நூன்ல கூட நம்ம காலையில மீட் பண்ணாததால ஆஃப்டர்நூன்ல குட் மார்னிங் சொல்லலான்றது கரெக்ட் இல்லை. We cannot say good morning. We cannot say good morning in the afternoon, depending on the time of your meeting. Okay, you have to greet the person. If it is in the morning, it is good morning. If it is in the evening, it is good evening. If it is in the afternoon, it is good afternoon. That's how you greet a person. Okay, so when you greet a person, right, depending on the time of the day, you have to meet them saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening. But we have another way of greeting also, good night. And when shall we use good night? When should we use good night? Suppose we meet someone during the night or after 8. We cannot start our conversation. We cannot start our conversation with a good night. Okay, when we say good night, it means that we have come to a closure of our conversation. We are closing our conversation. So when you meet someone late in the evening, when you meet someone late in the evening, you have to greet them by saying good evening. Then you speak to them whatever you want to speak. You have a conversation with one another, and then after you leave for that day, okay, when you leave and you have made up your mind to go home and to go to bed, you are not going to carry out any more activities after that with that person, okay, then you greet them good night, okay. Only at that time you greet them good night, and even the other person should greet you, say, using the phrase good night. So not you are not using, you should not use the good night phrase to start your conversation, okay. You are not supposed to use the good night phrase to start a conversation, even if you are meeting someone late in the evening. Then next, when we meet someone, okay, when we are getting introduced with someone, usually we say hello, good morning, how are you. Immediately we ask the question, how are you. Now how are you is a phrase of greeting, okay. How are you is a phrase of greeting. um, See, how are you? Okay, how are you is a phrase of greeting when you are not meeting that person for the first time. You have already met that person. You already know that person. Okay, when you already know that person only, good morning, how are you? You can say that. Good evening, how are you? You can tell that. Okay, if you are meeting the person, if you are meeting a stranger and you are greeting the stranger for the first time, then you should not use the phrase, how are you? Okay, right? And sometimes there is another phrase of greeting. How do you do? Okay, many of us think that how do you do is a question, and we try to get an answer for this question, or else we also tell an answer for this question when someone greets us saying, how do you do? How do you do is simply a phrase of greeting. It is not a question where you need to expect an answer, or else you need to give an answer. How do you do is a phrase of greeting which can be replied with the same phrase. If someone says, how do you do to me? I can tell, how do you do to the other person? அவங்க என்கிட்ட வந்து how do you do அப்படின்னு கேட்டாங்கன்னா நான் திருப்பி அவங்க கிட்ட how do you do சொல்லலாம். It is correct, and it is used when you meet the person for the first time, okay, when you meet the person for the first time, or else after a long period of gap, when you meet someone, okay. So how do you do, it's just a phrase of greeting, and it is not a question which you ask during the time of greeting. Okay, it is not a question which you ask during the time of meeting, right? Did you all understand that? So when we are meeting people, so we should be very clear with the phrase of these two meetings. How are you and how do you do? How are you? You should remember that you should not be using it when you are meeting a stranger, or else if you are meeting the person for the first time. Okay, and how do you do is a phrase of greeting when you meet a person or a stranger for the first time and greet one another. Okay, yes. Now, uh, I would like to present a video after just after some introduction of greeting to you all, greetings, exchange of greetings to you all, the way to exchange greetings to you all. Next way of greeting one another is glad to meet you, nice to meet you. Okay, this how do you do? When someone says how do you do, you can always say how do you do, and you can also say glad to meet you, nice to meet you. Okay, if someone says how do you do to you, you can always say glad to meet you or nice to meet you to them. Okay, and if someone says how are you, okay, you have already met that person and someone says how are you, then you tell them I'm fine, I'm thank you, I'm doing good, thank you. How are you, you can tell them. So three things which you need to remember when you're meeting someone late in the evening. When you're meeting someone late in the evening, you don't start your conversation by using a good night because it is that time of the day. Okay, otherwise in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever you're in the, or in the evening, whenever you're meeting someone, you have to use the time of the day for that meeting. You have to greet person according to the time of that day for that meeting. So this is one. Okay, one thing, one important thing you need to keep in mind while you greet people. Okay, the second thing is that uh, we use phrases of greeting, and when you use these phrases of greeting, okay, you should understand that how are you is a phrase of greeting. Yes, of course it is a question of greeting where you should be asking this how are you greeting to a person whom you have already met, who you already know. Okay, not to a stranger, not to someone whom you don't know, not to a person whom you are meeting for the first time. You cannot say, how are you? Then, how do you do? Now, how do you do? It seems to be a conversation. It seems to be in the style of a question for you. But it is actually not a question where you can expect an answer, I am fine, thank you. No. How do you do is just a phrase of greeting where the same phrase can be replied as a greeting. If someone says, how do you do? You also can say, how do you do? Glad to meet you. Nice to meet you. So these are the things which are used to greet one another. So this is greetings. We have to greet one another. And why do we greet one another? Why is it important to greet one another? It is because we need to break the ice before we start communicating. If they are going to be strangers, if we already know someone, then there is nothing where we have to break the ice. Okay, we don't we there is nothing that we have to become acquainted with them. We are already acquainted with this. Okay, acquainted means to know one another. Okay, then we become friends, then we become very best friends, like that we know someone very well. That's how we are. Okay, now greetings, we have two types of greeting, formal and informal greeting. So you should always remember formal greetings to people who are above you, for elders, for your professors, to the principals, or else when you go and work elsewhere, you have to use the formal greeting style for your people above your cadre. And if they feel friendly with you, if they are what to say, if they are okay with you, if they are at ease with you, okay, at that time, if they don't mind if you are informal with them, then you can use the informal way of hi and hello. Okay, that is how you have to greet one another. Next is introducing. When you introduce someone, okay, after greeting, you introduce someone. You might in a session of greeting, you need to introduce yourself. You need to introduce a friend who has come along with you. You need to in a gathering, okay, in a gathering, when you have to introduce a chief guest, you have to introduce someone who has come as a resource person. Okay, at that time, when you introduce, how do you introduce a person? So I would like to share a video with you all, right? And I hope you watch that video and then get back to the class so that it is easy for you all to understand it. Okay, so let me present the video. For every action, there is a reaction. So, welcome learners. This effective module is developed for you to improve your basic communication skills in English. The first lesson in basic English for youth is on greetings and introduction. So let's proceed to lesson 1, greetings and introduction. We greet people as soon as we meet them, and expressing it differs from person to person. To greet friends, we say hi, hello. We greet elders and people at workplace, saying morning, good afternoon, good evening. We sometimes greet them with morning along with their title. For example, good morning, Mr. Smith. Good afternoon, Mrs. Max. Good evening, Dr. Doolittle. Good afternoon, manager. We can also greet by saying, glad to meet you. Nice to meet you. How do you do? But remember, how do you do is not a question, but it is a phrase of greeting to which one can respond by saying, glad to meet you, nice to meet you, or using the same phrase, how do you do? If someone greets you saying, how are you? You can respond saying, I'm fine, thank you. I'm doing good, thank you. I'm well, thank you. Remember, when we meet someone late in the evening, after completing conversation, and when we take leave or before going to bed, we say good night. So, good night should not be used to greet people before we start a conversation, though we meet them late in the evening. So, let's move on to the next section, that is I really don't know if you were able to watch the presentation, but I would like to share the link of this. I would like to share the link of the SLO, which I have with me for you all to understand the lesson which I have taught today. Okay. So after we have gone through greetings, we've been speaking about how to introduce ourselves with one another. When we introduce ourselves with one another, there are few things which we need to remember when we introduce ourselves. Okay, we always start introducing ourselves with our name, but nowadays it has become a trend, a fashion. Okay, to say that this is, okay, this is, that is. Okay, when we use this is or that is, it becomes that it indirectly applies that we are introducing a object, we are introducing a lifeless thing, or else we are introducing a non-human. Okay, so let us not introduce ourselves, at least in a formal situation. Let us not introduce ourselves by saying this is, that is. Okay, it is better to say that I am. Start your introduction by saying I am. Okay, say that what you are, what is your name. I am, she is, he is, they are. Okay, don't please use this is or that is. This is a very informal way of introduction, and in a standard form of English, this can be also taken as a wrong way of introduction. Okay, you can do it among your friends, okay, among your informal group of people, but not with a formal group. So don't think that you are trendy or fashionable in using such a type of introduction. No, but it actually, in a learned scenario, in an educated scenario, in a formal scenario, okay, in an intellectual scenario, okay, it means that you are treating a person as an object, a non-human. Okay, only when you introduce a non-human, you say, this is a computer, that is a telephone. Okay, that is how you introduce something which is non-human. This is a tree, that is a monkey. Okay, so that's how you introduce. But when it is a person, okay, you should refer with the pronoun he is, she is, I am, you are, we are. Okay, we are learners of English. Okay, she is my classmate, he is my batchmate, he is my professor. Okay, so that is how you start introducing people. And when you have started introducing people, one thing which we do is we always want to say where we are from. Okay, when we want to say that we are from somewhere, okay, usually we make a small mistake by telling that I am coming from. Okay, I am Dr. Sugandhi Rao. I am coming from. Okay, it is grammatically correct, but according to the situation, it is wrong. Okay, there is no grammatical mistake when you use it, but still, it is a flaw in a based on the situation. When you say I am coming from, you use coming from to tell about a place where where you have visited and where you are temporarily coming from. Okay, so that is the place, that is the time when you use I am coming from, not always. Okay, now for example, let's say you after the break, you went to the canteen in the college. During the break, you went to the college and went to the canteen for some refreshments. You wanted to have some refreshments, you went there. Okay, so you are usually, as usual, you all are late to the class, and your professor is already there waiting for you. Okay, so when your professor is already there waiting for you, what happens is, what will happen, what will be the question what your professor asks you, What will be the question what your professor asks you? It is, where are you coming from? Why are you late? So only at that time you should say, I am coming from the canton. Okay, I am. So that is a temporary place which you have visited and come back. Sometimes some people would make use of the break time and would go to the library to pick up some books, to borrow some books. At that time, you should say, I am coming from the library. Okay, sometimes you would have gone to your department staff room and you would have met any of the professors, you would have had a conversation, you would have discussed some issues with them. So at that time you should say, you should respond. If someone's asking you, where are you coming from, you should say, I'm coming from the department. So it is at that time you use I am coming from, not to say your hometown or your permanent place of residence. When you introduce yourself, you say that I am from Chennai, I am from India. You don't say I am coming from India, I am coming from Chennai. You don't say that. When it is a permanent place of your residence, or else if it is your hometown, okay, you don't, no, hometown or your nationality, you don't use the phrase I am coming from, she is coming from, he is coming from, is a wrong usage. Okay, remember, I'm repeating it. I am coming from, she is coming from, okay, they are coming from should be used to tell about people who have gone to visit a place for temporary purpose, for a temporary purpose, and who are coming from there. Okay, not for your hometown, not for your permanent residence, or not from your for your nationality. Please keep this in mind. This is a very common mistake which we all make, we tend to make. Okay, it has become prevalent in our day-to-day conversation by using that I am coming from India, I am coming from Chennai. No, I am from Chennai, I am from India. Okay, so that's how you introduce yourself. After you tell your name, you introduce saying that you are from a particular place. And you can also use it when you introduce your friend. Okay, your friend or someone who has accompanied you for a conference or for a meeting. Okay, so you can say uh, she is Rini, and she is from Chennai. Okay, he is this person. He is Dr. Anand, and he is from this place. He is from Chennai. You have to introduce someone, and apart from introducing them, one more thing which we need to remember in introduction is you introduce yourself for the designation which you hold. Okay, for the designation which you are in. All right. Now, if you are say for example you're working somewhere, okay, and if you are given a designation, what is a designation? The title of your work. Okay, there are so many designations which you find in our college: the IQA's coordinator, the dean of humanities, the HOD of a department. Okay, there are so many designations which you come across. So, when you have such designations, you have to even introduce the designation. Okay, you have to even introduce the designation. You can say, this is Mr. This, and he is a professor of English. He, not this is, sorry, he is Mr. This, and he is a professor of English. He is from India, like that way. I am Dr. A. Suganti. I am a professor of English. Okay, I teach English communications, and I am from India. That's how you introduce yourself. Okay, and then when you introduce a person, another thing which you need to remember is when you introduce a person, you should always remember to introduce the person with a salutation if they don't have a designation. Okay, and even if they have a salutation, even if they have a designation, you have to mention their salutation. Now, what are the different types of salutation? Salutation is a familiar word which you would have come across while learning to write a letter. There would be different types of salutations which you can use. Mr., Mrs., Miss, Master, Ms. You have something called as Ms. Okay. Now, Mr., you use it for a young man or for a man. Okay. And Mrs. is for when you want to say that she is a spouse, she is a better half of someone, she is the lady of someone. At that time, you use Mrs. with her surname. Okay, that's when you say, when you are very sure that person is married to someone, when you very well know that person is married to someone, and you want to address her not by her name but by her husband's name, a surname, then you use Mrs. Usually, after marriage in India, after marriage, we attach the husband's name as our surname, okay, as our second name. So it is this is the way of introducing a married person, and you introduce them with their husband by saying Mrs. You use the salutation Mrs. Okay, and then you use Miss. When you say Miss, you mean it is not the Miss in your school, the Miss which we call in our school. No, that's not. Actually, you should call them the teacher or else madam. That's how you call them. Okay. Miss is for Miss. The salutation Miss is for someone who is already who is a young lady, who is a young unmarried lady. Okay, you use the salutation Miss, who is a young unmarried lady, right? And there is another salutation. It is not Miss but Ms. You get the Z sound at the last. Ms. Okay, it is Ms. And it is with the letters, which it is represented with the letters MS. Okay, it is represented with the letters MS, which means Ms. And you use this Ms to tell when you are not certain whether the young lady is married or not. Okay, when you want to be neutral in your salutation, you use Ms. Did you understand that? Okay, so you have to remember all these things while you greet and introduce yourself. Why is it important to greet and introduce yourself? It is a way of developing a communication. Usually, when we greet and introduce ourselves, okay, when we greet and introduce ourselves, it is important. Uh, it is important that we don't go much into the particulars, our personal particulars. Okay, you don't say much about your personal details. You have to tell, but then at the same time, you should not really reveal much about your personal matters. Usually, what happens in a session like where you have to greet and introduce yourself, uh, what happens is that we usually start telling about our parents, our siblings, what work our parent does, all these things. Okay, no, you cannot do that. When you have to introduce yourself, you have to keep in mind that you introduce yourself by telling about yourself, more about yourself, and superficially about your family members. Maybe you can say that your mother is this, your father profession is this. Okay, uh, so that is how you introduce yourself. Okay, so and remember that whenever you are greeting one another, you should understand whether you should greet someone formally or informally. Okay, and when you greet someone informally, you use hello, hi, hey, all these things. But when you introduce yourself, greet someone formally, it should always start with a greeting of belonging to the time of the day. It is good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Okay, that is why we are trained in our what to say. That's how we are trained when we have to trained in our schools. Okay, and this is why we get this training. We have to get used to this training when we are in a actual real life scenario, when we need to understand when we have to greet people formally and informal. So why people think nowadays, I often see that people think that greeting, even the greeting, you don't greet people. You feel a bit timid. You feel you don't think that a greeting is very important. No, a greeting is very important in a social environment. Okay, when you have to socialize with people. Are you the only people? Are you and the only people in this college? Or else are you the only, you and your friend, your family members are the only people in this entire world? No, nothing of that sort. You are among people. Okay, you are among people whom you already know, acquainted with. Okay, so at that time, and even when you go to a doctor, when you go to the bank, okay, we often don't greet. A verbal greeting is not there. Okay, it's usually a salute. It's a gesture. Most of the time it's a gesture. Okay, and sometimes it is there are communities, there are societies where they wouldn't accept gestures, or else they wouldn't immediately, when you start meeting a person, they wouldn't immediately accept a physical contact of giving a shake hand or hugging. All these things is not acceptable. Okay, so you need, so it is always safe to greet people verbally, not physically. Okay, instead of uh, first meeting, when you meet when you meet someone, it is always good to be neutral by greeting them verbally than making a physical contact with someone. So I hope you understand this. And greeting is not only necessary when we have, it is not only necessary for someone above our cadre. Okay. Whenever we go to a hotel, whenever we go to a theater, or whenever there is a security at the gate, we find them greeting us. It is important to return the greeting. It is important to return the greeting. Now, when we greet someone, it shows that how courteous we are, how polite we are. Okay? It shows our quality of being courteous and polite. It is not that it is, of course, they are being polite and courteous. But how do we retaliate to it? How do we respond to it? Okay, so we also have to show that we are courteous, we are educated, we are civilized, and we are also courteous, and so we can also greet them again. It is not that if a security person, or else if a sweeper, or else if a sanitation worker greets us, it is not that we should, or else if it's a steward in a restaurant, if they greet us, it is we think that it is not necessary to greet them. We try to ignore. No, it is not like that way. It is important to greet them. It shows that we are also mannered, we are also cultured. Okay, it shows our quality, it shows our civility. So it is important to greet anyone whom we meet. If they greet us, we should also greet them. And when we introduce ourselves, we have to meet them, we have to greet them. Okay, now when we introduce ourselves, okay, as I told you, what and all are the things which we have to remember. Okay, now usually when we greet, as I told you, uh, this physical greeting of greeting in a with a physical contact is always not welcomed in many of the societies. So we should be acquainted, we should be well aware of how to greet anyone. If it is our friends, if it is our family members, okay, then it is always okay to have a physical contact while we meet. Okay. Um, then we should not get influenced by the social media or else the reality shows or by the television where they greet one another by holding one another or hugging one another. This is not always permissible in all environments. Okay, in all situations it is not permissible in all situations, so we should limit ourselves. We should know where we have to greet people. Okay. And next, when you introduce, why is it important to introduce? You introduce you introduce someone or you introduce yourself. Okay. When you introduce, remember you don't use this or that. This is that is. When you introduce, um, when you use this is or that is, you actually mean to introduce a person by telling them that it is a non-human. Okay, this is my dog. That is a monkey there on the tree. And this comes every day here. Okay, so that is a tree which has many branches. Okay, so a non-human thing alone can be introduced using this and that. There are places where you use this and that also, but not in introduction. You cannot use it in introduction. When you're using it in introduction, you mean to say you are very informal and impolite. You become impolite by meaning them to be a non-human. So it is important that you remember all these etiquettes while you introduce and greet people. Okay, and don't forget to use the titles when you have to introduce the people. Okay, so what are the titles which we have learned? We have learned Mr., we have learned Mrs., and we have learned Ms., and we have learned Ms., which ends with the Z sound. We use Mr. When do we use Mr.? When we use Mr. when we have to, we use the salutation for a man. Okay, for a gentleman. When we have to introduce a gentleman, we use the salutation Mr. And when we have to introduce a lady who is married, okay, and we want to introduce them, we have to introduce them, we would introduce them with the surname, okay, or else the name of the husband. At that time, we would use the salutation Mrs. Okay, and as I told you, in India, it is quite no, a normal thing that we acquire our, not only in India, in many other countries of the world, we acquire our husband's name after. If we are going to introduce a lady who is married, we acquire a husband name as the hmm, as a second name. Okay, so we use the salutation Mrs. and then we use Miss, Miss, which is represented to introduce a young unmarried lady. Okay, a young unmarried lady. Okay, a girl also. Okay, so we use uh, Miss, and then we use Ms. MS. It's represented with MS, the letters MS. We use Miss to introduce a person whom we are not very sure if they are married, a person, a young lady, especially if they are not married, or else if they are not married. And if we want to be neutral in the salutation, we use the salutation Ms. Okay. Then again, when we introduce someone, we should also remember that um, we tell where we come from. Okay, when we tell that where we come from, it is important to remember that we don't use I am coming from, she is coming from. Don't use that COMING, continuous tense. Okay, don't use the continuous tense. It is grammatically correct as I told you, but it is not correct according to the situation. Okay, It is not correct according to the situation. When you want to tell about your nationality, when you want to tell about your permanent residence, where you come from, then you only use I come from, she comes from, he comes from, they come from, we come from, we come. Okay? We don't say we are coming from India. We come from India. We are from India. I am from India. Okay, that is how you say, right? Then, when do you use coming from? When it is a temporary place where they have gone to visit and they have come back. Then, at that time alone, you say, Ma'am, I am coming from the library. I am coming from the canteen. I am coming from the principal's office. I went to get a sign for my I went to get a sign, get my bona fide letter signed. Okay, I went to get something. I went to the library to borrow some books. So I'm coming from the library. Okay, I'm coming from the department. So it is at that time you use I am coming from. Did you all understand? I hope you all understand. And the first session is a short session for you all. There isn't much for you all, for me to say to you all, but there is much for you all to remember in this session, because you all would have come across the different ways in which we can greet and introduce ourselves, and the don'ts of greetings and introduction as well. Okay, and don't forget to remember to introduce someone with their titles also. Doctor. Okay, this is Dr. Anand. This is Dr. She is Dr. Kavita. He is Dr. Anand. Okay, so we should introduce some people with their titles, because the titles are more effective than the salutation. Mr. or Miss Salutation, the title is more effective. Sometimes, according to the designation, he is the CEO of our college. She is the vice principal of our college. He is the principal of the college. He is the Senate member of the university. He is the vice chancellor of the university. So that title holds more degree of dignity, honor than the normal Mr. or Miss Salutation. So you should remember all this. You should keep all this in your mind while you introduce yourself, greet and introduce people. And you should always remember the right way of greeting and introduction. So when you introduce yourself in the right way of greeting and introduction, when you greet and introduce in the right way, you show to them the very first instance itself, you show to people, you prove to people that you are at ease, you are free in a conversation, free for a conversation. You don't have any hindrance in using a language. There is no barrier which stops you from using a language. Okay, so the first thing when you do itself should be the right way. So greeting and introduction is a very basic thing in a communication. Okay, so which you have to keep in mind and introduce yourself. I would like to share there is a I don't know if you are able to what to say, uh, if you are able to uh, let's say, uh, let me try once again if I could present. Um, okay, um, I think I'm able to present the entire screen to y'all. Okay, and as I'm presenting the entire screen, okay, in the chat box, I have typed a link. I have shared a link. I don't know how in a live session, in a live wire session, I don't know how to share the link with you all. Maybe to all the, but you of course find this link. This is a college link. This is the college YouTube link where you find a short simple learning objective, a short learning objective. this short learning objective is an e-content. Okay, it's a e-learning objective which you can again go through. You can click this link, and whatever has been taught today for you, okay, is there as a small video presentation, not this video which we are talking with one another, where we are live with one another, not this video, but this is a video which is presented, which is made, which is created, and which can be shared with many people, okay, many people across the globe, and you can also watch it, and you can watch it at your own pace. It is not that you can watch it in this particular time, or else you can watch it or you it is just a 5 minutes video, I suppose, and you can watch it entirely devoting 5 minutes, or else you can have a break and then continue watching it if you come across some important issue in between. Okay, so the purpose of the e-content is for that. Okay, you learn, you go through the e-content at your own pace, at your own time limit, at your own um, feasible time. So that is why we have this, and you will find it in our college website. Okay, and you can go through it. The greetings and introduction lesson will be presented to you as a movie in this link, through this link, and when you go through this, you will understand there is a short exercise for you at the end of this link. Okay, at the end of this video, at the end of this video there is a short exercise which you can try to attempt. Okay, and then we will be creating classrooms where we will be giving you assignments, and we will be giving you a lot of we would be assessing you in a lot of things, okay, to make sure that you have understood what has been taught to you, right? And that is the main first uh, that's the main reason for us, uh, for us to create a classroom, and for us to assess you all, give assignments, all these things. It is not that to make you all do something, okay, take away your time by making you all do something. That's not the purpose, but it is for us to understand, and it is for you all as well to understand that how well you have understood something which has been taught, how well you are able to do something, well you are able to perform something, apply something, without the presence of the resource person or teacher, or else expert in of that subject. Okay, without their presence, how you are able to do. Okay, now when it comes to communication, you should also remember this, that communication skills, learning communication skills, okay, especially learning communication skills for a language is a life skill. You know, do you understand what is a life skill? Do you understand what is a life skill? A life skill is a skill which is learned for life. Now, for example, let's say you have learned cycling, you have learned swimming. These two things are life skills. Okay, you might have practiced cycling, you might have practiced swimming for a while, and after some time, you all would haven't swam, you all wouldn't have cycled, okay? But then, when a cycle is given to you all, or else when you are pushed into the water, automatically you start swimming, or else you start riding the cycle. You don't, it is not something which you forget, and you are not able to do it. Any time in your life, you will be able to do it, okay? If you are physically fit, you will be able to do it. So that is called as a life skill. Any form you learn a skill for your life. You remember it for your life, throughout your life. That is called as a life skill. And even communication, even learning communication of a particular language is called a life skill. Okay, you know why? Because you will not forget it at any point of time. And when will you not forget it at any point of time? Only when you practice it, only when you exercise it. It is like exercising your body. Okay, that is how you master your communication skills. Okay, and I would also like to bring in another example. Okay, now remember, when you are taught swimming, okay, You are taken to the pool. You are made to go inside the water. You are made to experience different depths of water. And then you are taught swimming. There you are made to swim. You have a practical experience of swimming. Okay. No one teaches swimming inside a classroom. They don't give you all instruction. This is how it's you have a backstroke, it is a butterfly stroke. All these things are not taught inside the classroom. But and even if it is taught inside a classroom, when you are taken to the swimming pool, you will not know to swim at all. Okay, the same way you have to learn a language. When you don't use the language, when you don't use the language which you have learned for speaking, writing, and if you don't attempt to read, or else if you don't attempt to listen to the language, then there is no use of learning that language, because you understand it very well. We all have been learning language for 12 long years throughout our schooling. And still, if we say that we are not, our mother tongue in 1 year, we are able to speak very well. But we have been learning this language for 12 long years, and still we are making a lot of grammatical mistakes. We are not very confident in the usage of language. That means that we are not using the language. We are not exercising with the language. Okay, and that is why we are not able to speak properly. So there is a lot of effort which you need to put, and I need to facilitate your in speaking the language. And when you show interest, I and then there are many other faculties in our faculty members in our campus who are ready to teach you all the usage of language and to make you all effective communicators in English. So I wish you all the best. So be attentive and be regular for the classes, so that uh, you benefit, you get the entire benefit of this course. Okay, it is going to be only for 6 days, and it is really going to be a beneficial one for you. Okay, thank you, children. I think we'll stop here. Let us be regular to other classes for the following classes hereafter. Okay, and let us do away with the small mistakes which gives people impression that we are not fluent in the language. Okay, and let us learn the situations in where we have to speak the proper way of, right. Let us not confuse between situations by using different sentences. So let us all develop to speak the basic communication properly. Yes. Thank you, children. Now I would like to end this session. I would not like to take much of your evening. Uh, I'm ending this session 5 minutes earlier, but from tomorrow onwards, there is more content where we will be covering the 1.5 hours. And I would like you all to come promptly to the session, and we will leave promptly after 1.5 hours. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for organizing as well. Thank you.